Hi, welcome to Wareham Free Library's Book Talk. I'm Marcia Hickey, the children's librarian, and this being Thanksgiving week, I'm going to discuss two books that explain the history of the Pilgrims in the New Land. The first one is called The Boy Who Fell Off the Mayflower, or John Howland's Good Fortune by P.J. Lynch. It follows a young man about 16, 17 who becomes or who is an indentured servant of John Carver, the leader of the Pilgrims on the boat on the Mayflower going across. Indentured servant means he has to do everything for John Carver. He's like the go-to back and forth, back and forth. He's the helper of John Carver, and he talks to the ship's captain, the sailors, he talks to the other religious leaders, and he goes back and forth with messages to the people who came across who were not Puritans, who were not religious. He's the go-to back and forth, and he has to do that for a set number of years without pay. And John Howland is a Puritan. He's religious, he has good values, he's polite, and he's good with people. So he does excellent at his job. And this is an illustration I'd like to share with you. Here he is in this job where he's also a liaison between the Native Americans. He's at the one of the thank you to the Native American dinners. He serves them because it isn't proper for the women to do this, so he becomes the one to do this. And it's done in chapters of different parts of his life. This part is the Mayflower returns to England, and this is the point where he has to make the decision, does he stay or does he go back home to his mother? And luckily for millions of people in the United States, he stays, he marries, he has 10 children that survive, and today there are millions of his descendants in the United States. The Boy Who Fell Off the Mayflower. The second book is called Two Bad Pilgrims by Kathryn Lasky and illustrated by John Manders. You can tell from the illustrations, and they're cartoonish, that this is a book for younger children. This is a good book for children ages grade 1 through grade 3 that explains the voyage and explains the first few years at Plymouth Plantation, but it's done very humorously. There are speech bubbles, there are little parts just like you're reading a graphic novel or a comic book. And they call it Two Bad Pilgrims because these boys were not religious. Their parents were not religious, and so they get into all sorts of trouble. The big incident, they discuss 3 incidents in the book, and one that I want to talk about is they start playing with matches, or called squibs in that time, in the hold of the ship with the gunpowder, so they could have blown up the entire ship and killed everyone, but they were stopped in time. And this is mentioned in history because the Puritans mark this down. They consider it an act of God that they found these boys in time and they saved themselves. And this picture here shows an incident of the Puritans coming along Native American site, and they find corn and a big cauldron, and they're starving, and they take it. And so in this bubble they say, if it had been us, we would have been called that we were stealing. But the Puritans call it an act of God. God graced them with this food. And so this makes children think what is right and what is wrong. And that's what the book is too, making decisions and thinking of what is right. And you find out a lot about history, but this is so funny. The kids won't even realize they're learning about history. And it's a good book to discuss with children. So both of these books describe younger people living in the new land as they come across. Great stories. Thank you for listening.